You know, when I think back, it is very much like high school.
Yes, our first couple of weeks were very important actually, not only for teaching us swords and quarterstaff and horse riding, bows and arrows and that sort of thing, but as a bonding experience as well. And we certainly bonded very quickly, the Merry Men. It took about 5 minutes, I think, for us to realise that we were going to be lifelong friends.
The off-screen social situation, I think, with Robin Hood Robin of Sherwood is quite unique. I mean, I've never been in anything else where people have stuck together so much off-screen as they have on-screen. I think it's quite amazing, really. I mean, the guys meet up, have drinks, we go out, meet for meals. You know, it's now 15 years on, and you know, we all met up the other day. It's wonderful. I made some very good friends doing Robin of Sherwood. It was great.
It's a lot of camaraderie. It was a you know, very knitted together unit, very unusual.
It was one of the things I look back on in my career and think, yeah, I'm really glad I was the Sheriff of Nottingham once upon a time.
I have very happy memories, and it was probably only a couple of days in 3 years, but of lovely, sunny summer's afternoons in beautiful, beautiful locations, having a lot of fun.
It spoilt me for other jobs because I've never worked on a job that's become that close as a group of people, you know.
Grew up playing in Sherwood Forest, hiding in the Major Oak, and going to Scarborough, spending our summer holidays in Scarborough, running around all the places where Robin Hood, by legend, is supposed to be. You know? So it was, for me, it was just like being asked to go back to my childhood.
Yeah, I started life as professionally as an actor, and eventually acting sort of gave me up, really, so I decided I'd do something else, like writing. And I'd had this idea for a television series. It was a thing called Catweasel, and it was based on the fact that we were coming back from my brother-in-law's farm. I saw on a gate, and I drew Annie's attention to it, the fact that it said Catweasel. And that started it off.
Well, when I was growing up, I was always fascinated by knights in armour, medieval history, and of course Robin Hood.
And it hadn't been done for a long time. The last one had been Richard Green, black and white thing, years and years and years ago.
I've been in producing for many, many years. My father was a stage producer in the West End Theatre, the West End of London. I wanted to go into the theatre. My father said, no, go into television, which I did as a junior, as an office boy, and sort of was lucky enough to work my way up through the production onto the studio floor, and eventually became a producer.
How did I come to work with Paul Knight? Well, the second thing I did after Catweasel, and Paul had been hanging around in the offices at London Weekend because he was due to do something, was Black Beauty, which Paul was appointed to as producer, along with Sidney Cole. And they asked me to do a few, and then they asked me to do a few more, and I ended up writing about 25 of them. We had a great time together, and we then formed a sort of company with Sid and Paul and I, called Gate Town, and we went on from there to do other series.
I love the original 1956 version with Richard Green, and grew up with that as a boy. I never really thought I'd do Robin Hood.
What I did feel was that outlaws tend to be very young and very idealistic, and so my vision, if to use a rather highfalutin word, about a commercial television series, was that they should be very young, very enthusiastic, very, in a sense, revolutionary, I suppose. I wanted to make them, well, sort of contemporary, so that, you know, you could recognise Will Scarlett as a person.
And I kind of based my character on a football hooligan, you know, like a Chelsea or a West Ham thug, you know, who would stand there and say, "Come on, stand, let's have it," you know, because to me the term scarlet means red, means rage, you know. And we talked about it at length, you know, where this man came from. His wife was actually raped and murdered by Normans, and all this hate, pent-up hate in this man.
I mean, it was a very funny thing where we went to America, we went to some sort of junket in Las Vegas, and we met all these American producers and things, and we all went into somebody's bedroom, and they all took their jackets off and lit up big cigars and said, "Hey, what's Robin Hood? What's Robin Hood?" So I said, well, it's the Dukes of Hazzard with bows and arrows. And because Dukes of Hazzard was about the #1 show at that time, they immediately, their eyes sparkled with dollar signs, and they got quite interested. But I don't think it actually happened with any of them. It was just one of those funny things. You go to Las Vegas for 2 days and talk about Robin Hood.
My other partner at the time, Sidney Cole, heard that Lou Grade was going to make another series of Robin Hood. We wrote to Lou and said we would love to produce it, as we just produced Dick Turpin. We'd previously produced Black Beauty. We had expertise in this field. He wasn't able to continue because he had a political problem in his company. I took the project to Goldcrest, where I was a producer, what they call a satellite producer. They put the money up for Kip Carpenter to write the script, and we took it from there. I took it to HTV, who liked it. Goldcrest took it to Showtime in America, who liked the project. Both of these companies put in half the money each, and we made the series.
Okay, so we'll go on the wardrobe now.
I'd heard of Ian Sharp over some years. When I was doing Dick Turpin, people would say, you should use Ian Sharp. For some reason we didn't. I then met him, was incredibly impressed by him. He loved the scripts. He was originally going to do 4 out of the 6 hours, or half of the 6 hours. But as we got talking about it, and as he talked to Kip about it, we thought we should get one director to give it an overall style. And that's what gave the series its look, its style. It came from Ian's vision.
Well, I got involved with Robin Hood through Paul Knight, who rang up and said, would you be interested in doing Robin Hood? And I hadn't been doing anything for a while, and I'd read some rather bad scripts, and I said, yeah, of course.
Well, of course, the casting of Robin was sort of fairly essential, and we had to get it right.
I can tell you exactly how the casting came about. Esther, we had a brilliant casting director who became producer of the 3rd series, Esther Charkham, who alerted me to Michael Praed. We needed a fit, attractive leading man who wasn't tremendously well known.
And what were we looking for? I think what we were looking for was somebody, it's a horrid word to use really, but that had a sort of fey quality, or a sort of woodland quality about him. And Paul, in fact, suggested that we went to see a young actor called Michael Praed, who was playing in Pirates of Penzance at Drury Lane, which was quite a huge part really for a very young actor. And the night we went, Michael did a stage trip to get a laugh. Now I knew it was a stage trip, and Paul knew it was a stage trip, and I thought, you cheeky little sod, you know, here you are at Drury Lane playing almost, well, the juvenile lead, and you're already indulging in stage trips to get laughs, you know. And I said, you know, I warmed to him enormously.
I went to see him and thought this boy has got it all. So we were very lucky to find Michael.
And they took me out to dinner, to lunch rather, and they were talking about this project. And of course, as I have, as you know, the monopoly on stupidity, I wasn't even remotely aware that actually they were offering me this job. Essentially, that's how it. And so, you know, the meeting was going fine, and you know, I was getting a free meal, and God knows I never turned that opportunity down. And afterwards, I was speaking to my agent. She said, "Well, you know, congratulations."
And he was as good as gold. Michael was as good as gold, and very, very good.
The script was different somehow. I mean, different. It wasn't just the classic Robin Hood tale and the way that Kip told it, and the way that Paul was talking about doing this. I just loved the idea, you know, in the same way that when I first saw Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the thing that I took away from that was that the glorious relationship between those two guys and that whole buddy picture thing, for some reason, had a very strong resonance for me. And when they were explaining Robin Hood, it was going to be like these guys who were going to be together and forge and fashion these tremendous relationships. And I found that terribly appealing.
Ian Sharp, of course, was given his head. We said to Ian, shoot it, go for it, let's see something different. Don't play safe, which is what Ian did. He got the best, I think, out of the cameraman, Bob Edwards and Brian Morgan, allowed them to do things they wouldn't normally be doing, to push it that little bit further. Ian used a lot of different lenses, he used a lot of filters. He made the woods magical, and he gave us brilliant performances from the actors. And I think Robin, for him, was some of his best work. I think there are many wonderful images in Robin. You only need to watch the very first episode that Ian Sharp ever filmed, when the Norman soldiers come out of the mist on the rafts across the lake to attack the Saxon village right at the very beginning of the film. We both wanted to make it very different from the original Robin Hood. We wanted to make it, at the time, a Robin of today. In those days, that was the 80s, with a young cast. Kip had the idea of bringing the sword and sorcery element into it, an area that he was very familiar with.
The element that I did add, which has been sort of taken up by subsequent versions, because it's like a snowball, you know, the thing grows over hundreds of years, really, was the occult thing, you know, the pagan element, which has never been in before, I don't think, in any of the versions before. Hearn, Ian Sharp decided that he was going to be a shamanistic figure, and he was a human being who became a god, which is shamanism.
With regard to the fantasy elements in the picture, I didn't want them to be too far-fetched. So I wanted it to be rooted in the mythology of the period, so that it was believable. I mean, Herne the Hunter to me is a medicine man. He's no sort of magician. There's like the Merlin figure, you know, that people believed and built up these great myths and legends around these people. Often things they never saw, but by hearsay or by the mood and atmosphere that they did things in. So that was the approach.
Is your aim true? Fire will consume you.
Okay, the burning bow sequence is slightly different, but there's a little bit of trickery here and there, but really it was meant to be medieval, believable, but to us, to a modern audience, fantastical, you know.
Certain elements changed, elements that I had written, because when you get a director on board and he's on your side and he's an imaginative, really creative director.
So we'll have one wide and the one tight. Yeah, just the last one, please.
And Ian Sharp certainly did that.
There was one sequence in particular I remember where I couldn't come up with an idea, and it was where the Merrys are locked in I think it's Will Scarlett and the boys are locked in this dungeon and they escape.
Not in the dark, so.
Because the way it was written was that they get the hand through the bars, pull the soldier by the, you know, getting an arm around the throat. I've seen this too many times, you know. And I thought, I couldn't think of any new idea to this. And then one night we're having dinner with Paul Knight. He said, of course, in those days, he said they'd have dungeons, you know, they'd just drop them in a hole. And he said, yes, why didn't you say that ages ago? That's it.
Oh, no, the devils will come. Oh.
Yeah, but how do they get out? And he said, well, they climb on each other's shoulders. And I said, yeah, but there's 5 of them. He said, so you need another one? I said, yeah, you need another one. And he said, well, what about there's an old prisoner in there? I said, what do you mean there's an old prisoner? He said, there's an old prisoner been in there years, and they just climb on him and get out. And I thought, I quite like this old prisoner.
Who's he?
No, he's mad. No, I ain't. No. Feet first. It's the only way out of here.
Maybe.
So the old prisoner arrived, and I wrote the scene. And then the old prisoner, I said, well, he's got to have a pet, hasn't he? Because he's been in there about 8 years.
I ain't coming. No, don't count me. Can't leave Arthur.
Arthur, who's Arthur?
He's Arthur.
You're as mad as he is.
He can't leave Arthur. It never occurred to him, because he's crazy, that he could take Arthur with him.
Are you coming or what?
Originally, you see, we had 2 other Marys. I didn't want it to be a huge band because it meant that then you'd have to have about 500 Normans to fight them because they had to be, you know, it had to be a small band.
Fletcher.
Dickon of Barnsley.
And we decided that they were that they had a David and Jonathan relationship, you know, that they were in a sense lovers. We didn't actually state it. But we sort of subliminally, I think, suggested it. Anyhow, they both died because I got to the point where I thought, look, we can't kill any of these guys off. We can't kill Ray Winston off, or we can't kill Clive Mandel off. I mean, we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we do this. I wanted somebody fairly close and in the band to die so that Robin could have a big, let's go on with this, chaps, you know, he didn't die in vain sort of speech, which they have in American war movies and the end of cowboy films and things like that.
Listen to me. Our friends who were killed, they'll never starve or be tortured or chained in the dark. They're here with us in Sherwood.